Hello everyone, welcome back to our Python programming series. This is our 7th lecture, and in the previous lecture we learned about strings. We learned how to create strings, access individual characters using indexing, slice strings, use different string methods, and loop through strings. Today we are going to build on something that we learned earlier, loops. We know what loops are, right? We are going to learn about something known as nested loops now, which is basically putting one loop inside another loop, right? And then we'll use nested loops for creating. Then we'll use nested loop for pattern printing. We'll create patterns using stars and numbers. This might look confusing at first, but once we understand what each loop is responsible for, the patterns become much easier. So these will be the topics covered today. What are nested loops? Nested for loops, understanding rows and columns, end parameter, star patterns, number patterns, and will solve practice problems at the end. Now, by the end of this lecture, you should be able to understand what nested loops are and how they work. You learn how to use one loop inside another loop. You'll also learn how to think about patterns in terms of rows and columns. We'll use the end parameter of the print function because that's important when creating patterns. And then we'll create different star patterns and number patterns. Finally, we'll be able to combine nested loops with conditional statements and solve some practice problems, right? Before we start nested loops, let's revise normal loops quickly. A loop allows us to repeat a block of code, right? For example, if we want to print numbers from 1 to 5, we can write for I in range 1, 6, because it stops at 5, right? If the range is 1, 6, what is actually inside it is from 1 to 5. Stop minus 1, right? And then we'll put a colon, print I. As you can see, the for loop here runs 5 times and prints the numbers from 1 to 5. We also learned about while loops, break, continue, and range function. So today we are not going to learn entirely new concept. We are going to be building on our previously learned concepts. We're taking something that we already know and putting one loop inside another. Do you also want to revise for loops with a string? Wait. Let's see for I in range 3. Print hello. Now this will print hello 3 times. See, this is another way to use it. That is a single loop, right? This is a single loop. Now imagine that every time this outer loop runs, another loop runs which is completely inside this loop, right? This is one loop, but nested loops are inside this loop. We'll write another loop, right? So what is a nested loop? A nested loop is simply a loop inside another loop, as I have been saying. For example, this thing. I'll type it once, right? It's clearer. Okay, let's first write it and then I'll explain it. For I in range 3. Now we'll write another loop inside this loop for j in range 3. Print. Let's print star. We can print anything, but for now let's print star. Hmm. Yeah, your code editor can do that sometimes. Um, as you can see, this is one loop inside another loop, right? The first loop is known as the outer loop and the second loop is known as the inner loop. The important thing is to understand that the inner loop completes all of its iterations before the outer loop moves on to its next iteration. So let's imagine that the outer loop runs for the first time. I will become 0, right? And then Python enters the inner loop and the inner loop runs 3 times. Only after these 3 iterations are finished does Python go back to the outer loop and then moves on to the next value of I. For every one iteration of outer loop, the inner loop runs completely. This will run once and this will run in that one time, this will run 3 times. That is why so many have been printed, right? Let's try something else. Just change it a little bit and run it, right? So the outer loop here has 3 iterations. As you can see, the range is 3, which will be I is equal to 0, I is equal to 1 and I is equal to 2, right? That's how the range function works, if you remember. Then for each iteration of this 0, 1 and 2, the inner loop runs 2 times since the range here is 2. So when I is 0, j becomes 0 and then 1. Then the loop finishes, the outer loop moves to I is equal to 1. Inner loop starts again and j becomes 0 and 1 again. And the same happens for I is equal to 2. This will again restart and become 0 and 1 again. So inner loop runs 2 times every time the outer loop runs, right? If we try print I in range 3 for j in range 2, right? Let's change something in the print function. I is equal to comma our variable I, comma j is equal to comma again our variable j. And what if we run it this time? See, here we can really understand what's happening, right? I is 0 only and j I is 0, 1, 2, and for each of these j is running 2 times. Okay, this is a really useful way to understand nested loops, right? We can actually see which value belongs to the outer loop and which belongs to the inner loop. And in our previous example, did you notice how many stars were printed? Two outer two outer iterations and then 3 inner iterations. So it will be 3 into 2 is equal to 6 stars. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Right? what's written here is, we did this example, then outer loop, inner loop, inner loop, outer loop. The inner loop runs completely for each iteration of the outer loop. Okay, we got that. And yeah, we did this, right? The inner loop completes all its iteration before the outer loop moves on to its next iteration. So when I is 0 in our previous example, j will be 0 and 1. When I is 1, j will again be 0 and 1. When I is 2, j will again be 0 and 1. Okay? It will repeat itself each time, j. So when we use nested loops to create patterns, we can think of the output as a table. The outer loop usually controls the rows of the table, these, right, horizontal, and inner loop usually controls the inner loop usually controls what happens inside each row in the columns, right, the vertical ones, such as the number of stars, right, or numbers. For example, here we have 3 rows. Each row contains 3 stars. So we can think of it as 3 rows into 3 columns, right? This way of thinking is extremely useful for pattern questions. Whenever you see a pattern, first ask yourself how many rows are there. Then ask how many things are printed in each row, right? How many rows are there and how many things are printed in each row. Let's try another example. For I in range 3, for j in range 3, print star and then outside this loop print. Okay, so this end parameter, I'll explain it to you in a bit. First let's run this program. See, so every time the outer loop runs, we create a new row here, and the inner loop prints 3 stars on that row because the value of range here is 3. Then the final print moves us to the next line. Okay, yes, the outer loop controls the rows and the inner loop controls how many items appear in each row. Before we create our first proper program, there is one small thing that we need to understand, and that is the end parameter of print, right? Normally when we write print, we just use print bracket bracket, right, like this, normal, and Python prints the star and moves on to the next line. That's why this thing, print star, print star, print star, prints this. But when we're creating patterns, we usually want things in the same line. So then we can use this thing, the end parameter, star, comma, end is equal to empty space. This keeps the output on the same line. The end parameter tells Python what to put after printing, right? So we're putting a space after printing each star. By default, print uses a new line as the end parameter, but when we use this specifically, Python prints a space instead and it stays on the same line. And should I show it to you once? What happens when we use end parameter and what happens when we don't use end parameter? Let's first we'll not use it. See, it was every star was printed in a new line by itself. But if we use the end parameter and we put a space at the end, star, comma, end is equal to quotation marks space. Star, okay. Shall we run this? As you can see, when we weren't putting the end parameter, it was printing each star in new line. But after we put the end parameter as space, we're getting the stars in the same line, right? This is how it can be used. It's very important for printing patterns. Now let's combine everything that we have learned. Let, let's print this pattern. Um, First, let's think about our pattern before writing the code. How many rows do we need? Don't look at this, just look at this. How many rows do we need? 3. And how many stars do we need in each row? 3 again. So the outer loop should run 3 times, right, to print 3 rows. And since we need 3 stars in each row, the inner loop should also run 3 times, right? So we'll do for I in range 3. Outer loop will run 3 times now. For j, technically you can use any variable here, like I'm using I and j because they are the most common and sort of universally accepted. But you can also write for row in range or for call in range, right? It just depends on your comfort. Print star, comma, end is equal to, yes, space. And then print. Let's run this. As you can see, our pattern has been printed. This is what we were trying to print, right? So this controls the 3 rows, and then we have the inner loop. This prints 3 stars. Because we're using the end parameter here, the stars stay on the same line on a single loop, right? Otherwise, what would happen otherwise? Shall we see? See, what kind of pattern is this? It isn't printing in the same row. We are not getting this, we are getting this instead. That is why the end parameter is important. And then the print function here basically moves us to the next line, and then the outer loop starts its next iteration and creates the new row. Okay. So let's break down the previous program mathematically, right? The outer loop runs 3 times. So we get 3 rows. For each row, the inner loop runs 3 times. So we get 3 stars per row. Therefore, 3 into 3, 9 stars. This way of thinking becomes very useful when we start to create more complicated patterns, right? Let's print another program. For I in the range 4, for j in range 5, print star and then this print function to move to the next line. So how many rows here do you think we'll get? We are putting 4 in the range of the outer function and 5 in the range of the inner function. How many stars should we get in each row? So number of rows will be 4 because the outer loop is 4, right? 4 total rows. How many stars in each row? Yes, 5 stars in each row. So how many total stars will we get altogether? 4 multiplied by 5, 20 stars will get. Let's run it once. So as you can see, we're getting 1, 2, 3, 4 rows and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5 stars in each row. 4 rows and 5 stars in each row. Okay? And 20 total stars. You can count it if you want. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Okay? Now, shall we print a different type of pattern? Earlier we were printing the square pattern. Now this is the increasing start pattern. Here we'll make things a little more interesting. Instead of every row having the same number of stars, we want the number of stars to increase with each row, right? So for example, here the first row has 1 star, second has 2, then 3, 4, 5. We want it to increase. So the number of stars will depend on the row that we are currently on. How? In the first row, how many stars are there? 1 star. Second row, how many stars? 2 stars. Third row, 3 stars. Fourth row, 4 stars. And fifth row, 5 stars. So the number of stars here clearly depends on the number of rows. And so here the outer loop variable is very important. Let's write our program here. I'll first write it and then explain it. For I in range 1, 6, 1 to 5, for j in range I, I'll explain it to you, don't worry. Star n is equal to space. And then we'll come out of this loop and then print to move on to the next line. So here the outer loop I gives us values from 1 to 5, right? Why didn't we write just range 5 here? Because we don't want the range to start from 0, we want it to start from 1. Okay? So outer loop gives us values from 1 to 5. Then we use this variable I here in the range, because what were we seeing here? The number of stars in each row was corresponding to the number of rows, right? In first row 1, second row 2. So we can write I here. Okay? In row 1, 1 star, row 2, 2 star, row 3, 3 stars, like that. So when we run this, let's run it once. See, we're getting our increasing star pattern. So When I is 1 in the first loop, this will run once. Okay. When I is 2, this will run twice. Remember, right? For each iteration, this thing will run as many times as we have given inside this range. So when I is 1, this range will also be 1 and it will run once. When I is 2, this range will be 2 and this inner loop will run twice. When I is 3, this range will become 3 as well, and the inner loop will run 3 times to print 3 stars in the third row. I4, this runs 4 times, I5 runs 5 times, and so on, right? The number of stars is increasing with each row, we know that. Let's look at this pattern in a tabular form, right? The inner loop is depending on the outer loop. That is why range I that we put inside here is so important here. We are not telling Python print 1 star, then print 2 stars, then print 3 stars. What we're telling Python is on each row print as many stars as the current row number. That's the real power of loops. We describe the rule rather than manually writing every line, right? We can also just, if we want a bigger pattern, we can just change our range. We're only changing the number of loops. We're only changing the number of rows using this range. We didn't change anything inside or anything else. We just changed this. And as you can see, it is still printing our increasing star pattern. This is in the last row, how many are we printing? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And how many rows are there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 rows, and in the ninth row, 9 stars are printing. 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, right? We didn't have to change anything else, we just changed this range here. We can also make it smaller. See? The logic is not changing, we are just changing the numbers here. We printed the increasing star pattern with each row the number of stars were increasing, but can we print the decreasing star pattern, the reverse of the previous pattern? Instead of increasing the number of stars, we'll start with more stars and then decrease it. For this, we'll use this thing. From our previous lectures of range, we remember that we can use negative step as well, right? So, and that will, negative step will basically decrease it, right? The value will start from 1 and then stop at 0. Our start is 1 and our stop is 0. Since it's negative step, it will be 5, then 4, 3, 2, 1 till it reaches 0, because 0 is the stop. Let's try writing our program. For I in range 5 as our start, 0 stop, minus 1 is our step. So it will keep decreasing by minus 1 till it reaches 0. For j in range I, and is equal to this, then print. Shall we print it once? As you can see, we are getting our decreasing star pattern this time. When I is 5, we print 5 stars. When I decreases by 1 because of this negative step and becomes 4, we print 4 stars, right? And when it becomes 3, 2 stars, 2, 2, and finally 1. Why is it not stopping at exactly 0? Because it's stop -1 and all of that, right? So our pattern naturally decreases here. If we want a bigger pattern, we can go, we don't have to change much, right? We just changed our range, we didn't change our logic, the logic is still the same. Okay, so now let's move on from stars to numbers. Here we want this pattern, right? The number of values in each row increases, right? And again the outer row will control the loop will control the row number, right? And this time, instead of printing a star, we'll print the value of j, which will be a number, right? Let's go here. I'll first write the code and then explain it to you. Let's write for I in range 1, 6, colon, for, this is our nested loop, right? For j in range 1 comma I plus 1, print j. We are not printing star, we are printing j this time, and end with space and print to move on to the next line. So why did we write I plus 1 here? Because the ending value of the range is excluded, right? This range is technically from 1 to 5. 6 is not included in the range. If I is 1, then we want to include 1, so we need the range a bit more than, like if we want 1, then we want the range to be 1 comma 2, which will give us 1. If I is 3, then we want 1 2 3. So we use range 1 comma 4 if we want till 3, right? That is why we write I plus 1. Now we'll run this once and see. We are getting our pattern here, right? Yeah, 1 I plus 1, as you can see, it's increasing, right? The value, it's 1, then it's 1 1 1 2, then it's 1 2 3 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4 5, right? The inner loop prints numbers from 1 up to the current row number. We know that. Now let us move on to repeating number pattern. We'll make a small change in our previous code. Instead of printing the inner loop variable j, we'll print the outer loop variable I. Right? Instead of printing this j, we'll print I, and since we just want the same number and we don't want this 1 1 2 1 2 3, we are printing this repeating number pattern, right? So we'll just write I here instead of 1 comma j plus I plus 1, and we'll run this. See, now our numbers are repeating 1 2 2 3 3 3 4 4 4 5 5 5. When I is 1, the inner loop runs once and prints 1. and then when I is 2, then the inner loop will run twice, but it prints I, which is 2, both times. It's not increasing, right? It's still 2. When it's 3, it will print 3 times, and so on. Here I controls which number we print, and J controls how many times we print it, right? And we can also change like the range for it. If we want it to repeat only till 4, then we can just write 5 here, and it's just going till 4. If we want it to be more, if we want it to print till 7, see, so this is our repeating number pattern. Then square number pattern, we printed a square number pattern before, right? But this time we'll print number. That time we printed stars, this time let's print a number. Let's first observe this pattern, right? It has 3 rows and 3 numbers per row. So we'll write for I in range 1, 4, colon, for J in range 1, 4, print J and space, and then out of this loop and print. You can notice here that the outer loop variable I isn't actually being printed, right? It is simply controlling how many rows we have. The inner loop controls the numbers that appear in each row. And yeah, we run this. As you can see, we are getting this same square number pattern, right? 3 rows and each row has 3 numbers from 1 to 3. Okay. We can also change the range as per what we want. If we want it to be something like this, see, now there are 4 rows as per the I is controlling the number of rows, and 5 numbers in each rows as per the J. Okay. Nested loop with conditions. Nested loops don't have to be used only for printing simple patterns. We can also put an if statement inside the inner loop, right? For example, here, if we want to print a diagonal, this star is in a diagonal, right? We only want the star. Let's see, we only want the star when the row number and the column number are the same. 1, 1, 2, 2, 3, 3, 4, 4, 5, 5, right? So what can our condition be? Yes, it can be if j is equal to I, right? Then we print a star, otherwise we print a dash. So let's try this program once. It looks pretty interesting. For I in range 1, 6, for j in range 1, 6. Now we'll write our condition here. If j is equal to I, print star, because we wanted to print in a diagonal, right? Only when the row number and the column number are same. Equal to this, else print dash, and again n is equal to this, and then we come out of this and print. So this will be our code. Shall we try running this once? As you can see, our diagonal is being printed here, right? The stars are only in the diagonal when the row number and the column number are same. The outer loop will control the rows, the inner loop will control the columns. For each position, we check whether I and j are equal. If they are equal, we run the diagonal, so we print star, otherwise we print dash. Okay? So how to approach pattern problems, right? When you're given a pattern problem, don't immediately start writing random loops and hope the computer develops empathy. Okay? The computer doesn't work like that. So we can follow a process. First we'll count the number of rows. Then we can look at the first row and we can see how many things are printed, right? How many items appear in each row. Then we'll look at the second row and we'll see if the number of items changes, right? Then we can find the relationship between the row number and the number of items, decide what the inner loop should print, write the outer loop and the inner loop, and then run the program and compare our output with the required pattern, right? That is basically what's written in here. For example, if we have a pattern, wait, I'll print one for I in range 1 5, for j in range I, print star and equal to this and print. Okay, so if we have this pattern, okay, if we follow the steps here, first we'll see how many rows we have. 1 2 3 4. We have 4 rows. And how many stars are there per row? First there are 1, then 2, then 3, then 4. So our inner loop needs to depend on I, right? That is basically the thought process on this, right? Now, common mistakes. Let's look at some common mistakes. The first is, as usual, incorrect indentation. If we are printing nested loop, this can't be the syntax for it, right? We have, as I told you, Python works on indentation. We need there to be a space here, right, for it to be considered a nested loop. If we write like this, then these are just two different for loops, not a nested loop. And then for getting the print after the inner loop, without it everything may appear on one line, right? We saw that earlier as well. Another mistake is confusing I and j. Usually we use I for the outer loop and j for the inner loop. These variable names aren't mandatory to use, like you can use any variable name. You can also some people also use call and row for these, like for call for j and row for I. You can use anything. These are just usually used, right? Using a consistent naming convention basically makes the code easier to understand. Okay. Now let us move on to our practice questions. Let's just delete this. So the first question is print print a 5 cross 5 square of stars. So we have 5 rows, and so our outer loop needs to run 5 times because the outer loop decides the number of rows, and each row contains 5 stars, right? Square of stars, yeah, each row will contain 5 stars. So our so inner loop will also need to run 5 times, right? So let's write for I in range 5, outer loop needs to run 5 times. For j in range, since this is just printing a star pattern and not any number or anything, we don't need to write 1 comma 5. Even if we start from 0, it will work. So now our inner loop will run 5 times, outer loop will run 5 times, starting from 0, right? And then what we want to print? We want to print the star asterisk comma end parameter equal to space. What do we do now? Do we write print here? No, we write it here. Okay, let's run this now. As you can see, this is our star pattern. 1 2 3 4 5, 1 2 3 4 5, 5 cross 5. Okay, the outer loop creates 5 rows, and for every row the inner loop and prints 5 stars. Therefore we get a 5 by 5 square. Let us move on to the next question, which is to print this pattern right here. We have printed a similar pattern before. Let's look at it first. How many rows do we have? 1 2 3 4 5. We have 5 rows, and when we look at the number of stars, unlike the previous question, which was the number of stars were same in every row, here they are decreasing. This is a decreasing pattern, so the number of stars goes from 1 2 3 4 5. Can you notice that the number of stars in each row is equal to the row number, right? First row 1 star, second row 2 stars, third row 3 stars, fourth row 4 stars, and fifth row 5 stars. Okay, so the number of stars is equal to the current row number, right? That means our inner loop should depend on I. Okay, let's write our code now. For I in range 1 comma 6, for j 1 comma 6 because we want from 1 to 5. Okay, yes, we want 5 rows here, so we'll write 1 to 6. For j in range, what should be the range? Is equal to I. Okay, because it's depending on I, we just saw that. Now what do we want to print? We want to print star and space. Then we come out of this, we write print to move on to the next line. And as you can see, our pattern has been printing. This is the same thing here. If we don't write this print here, what will happen? Same line. The line does not change if we forget to write print here. And if we write print inside this loop, now every single star is in a new row. Okay, that is why we write print right here. Now our pattern is printing properly. Okay, So this is our next pattern to print. This is, I think we already did a similar question maybe. This is similar to question number 2, except we are printing numbers instead of stars. So first we count the number of rows. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 rows, right? And what does each row contain? First row contains 1, second row contains 1, 2, third row contains 1, 2, 3, fourth row contains 1, 2, 3, 4, and fifth row contains 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So each row starts at 1 and ends at the current row number. Starts at 1 and ends at the current row number. So we can write for I in range, how many rows? 5 rows, so we write 1 comma 6. Okay, for j in range, each row starts with 1. J determines what the row contains, right? Each row will start with 1 and will go till the current row. This I plus 1 thing I already explained previously, right? Just now when we were learning about these patterns. Because we're using I plus 1 because the ending value in range is excluded. So if the range is going 3, if I is equal to 3, then we are actually getting 1, 2. Okay? If I is equal to 4, then we are getting 1, 2, 3. That is why we are doing I plus 1 here, so that the last number is included. Okay? So now we print j comma n is equal to this. Print. We run this. As you can see, our pattern has been printed. Okay. Let's take it. If the I is 3 here, then the range will be I plus 1 comma I plus 1. So the range becomes 1 comma 4, right? If it's 1 comma 3, if I is 3 and this becomes 1 comma 3, then it won't print till 3, it will only print till 2. So we need this I plus 1, okay? Remember this. So this will become 1 comma 4. If I is 3 in the third row, I 3, range 1 comma I plus 1 4, and it will print 1 2 3 then. Okay. Now we'll move on to our fourth practice question, which is printing this pattern. This one looks slightly different, right? If we count the number of rows, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rows. But we are counting downwards, this is decreasing. And if we determine how many times each number appears, it appears 5. 5 will appear 5 times, 4 appears 4 times, 3 appears 3 times, 2 appears 2 times, and 1 appears 1 time. So inner loop needs to run I times. We want to print the outer loop variable I rather than j. Okay. We'll just go and write our code first. For I in range 5, 0, -1, for j in range I, okay, -1 because we are decreasing, right? it's going downwards, it's decreasing. That is why we are using -1, step by -1. So it will go 5 4 3 2 1. Okay, for j in range I, print, we determined that we need to print I, right, and is equal to this. Outside of this loop we write print. We learned what happens when we don't indent print properly, right, or if we don't write print at all. Anyways, now we run this. As you can see, we are getting our decreasing pattern. When at the beginning, when I is equal to 5, the inner loop will run 5 times, right, in the loop will run 5 times and print, because the range of the inner loop is I. So when I is 5, the range becomes I 5. Inner loop will run 5 times and print the value of I, that is 5 in this case, each time. Okay. Then step by -1, so it will become 4. So value of I will be 4. Then the range of j will therefore become 4 and it will print 4. It will print 4 times. Then it will again go to -1, it will become 3. The range of inner loop or range of the j loop will become 3. So print 3. Since the range is 3, it will print 3 times. Then it will go to -1, 2, I will become 2, then it will become 1, right, and it will stop before 0. One number before 0, that means it will stop at 1. Okay, let us now move on to our fifth question, which is create a 5x5 pattern where the diagonal contains star and the remaining positions contain minus. We just did this, right? But you should try it yourself once. I'll also show it to you once again. We solved this in one of our examples just now. How do we do that? Do you remember? For I in range 1 6, for j in range 1 6, if, what was the conditional? How are we going to print star in only the diagonal? Right. If I equal to j, when the row number and column number is the same, then we print I, then we print star, because that is when we are at the diagonal. So we print star. Shall we change it to something else, because we already did star? Let's print hashtag. Okay, let's do hashtag, and is equal to this. Else print, what should be print in the else? Let's print exclamation mark. Okay, so hashtag will be printed in the diagonal and exclamation mark everywhere else. We go out of this loop, we write print, and we run this. See, hashtag is being printed at the diagonals and exclamation marks are being printed elsewhere, right? If we look at it one by one, for the first row, right, when I is equal to 1, inner loop goes 1, j is equal to 1, j is equal to 2, j is equal to 3, j is equal to 4, j is equal to 5. Remember, because the inner loop runs fully for each iteration of the outer loop. Do you remember that? So if I is equal to j, then we'll print hash. Okay, and when the value of j is, this is when the value of j is 1, right? Value of I is 1, value of j is 1, and then j will move on to 2. I is equal to j, no, because I is still 1 but j has become 2, so it will print exclamation mark. Then j will move on to 3, again it will print exclamation mark. It will go like this. Okay, so that is for it for our last question. Do you want to try another problem? You know what, let's try a weirder question. We'll put it inside a comment. Let's do 1 2 3 4 5 6. Let's keep this as our last question. 7 8 9 10. We leave space here. What if we want to print this pattern? This is basically a series 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10, right? It's continuing. How are we going to print this? How many rows do we need? First of all, we need 4 rows. 1 2 3 4. Number of values per row, 1 2 3 4. Okay, so it will be for j in range I, right? But we need to keep track of the number separately because it's constantly changing, right? So we'll write number is equal to 1, and then we'll print the number and then increase the number. Okay, it might sound confusing orally, so we'll write our program once. For I in range 1 comma 5, for j in range I, print. What should we print? Because the number is increasing again and again, we'll just introduce a new variable, num. Let's do number fully. Okay, number is equal to, first we'll keep it 1. Okay, so print number. Okay, and space, and then we'll increment the number. Number is equal to number plus 1. We'll change the value inside the number to number plus 1. Inside this loop only, not outside this loop, inside this loop only. Because for each iteration of I, j will run I times. Okay, then we come out of here and we write print. So I will again tell us which row we are on, j tells us how many values we need to print in that row, but neither one actually determine the number being printed. It depends on this thing, because the number need to continue from one row to the other, right? We don't have any other way of printing it. That's why we are creating a separate variable known as number. So if you look at it, but let's run this once. Okay, as you can see, our pattern is being printed 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10. when I is 1, right, range of j is 1 as well. So it will run once. Number at the beginning the number is 1, so 1 will be printed here, and after printing the number will go here and number will become 2. Now since j is only supposed to run once because I is 1, it will come out of this loop, go back to the outer loop, I will become 2, right? So the range of j will also become 2. Now it will go to number. Right now it's 2 because it increased here, right? So 2 will be printed, number will become 3. Since j is supposed to run 2 times this time, it will go back to j and then print 3 here, and then it will become 4. Since it was supposed to only run 2 times, it will go back to the outer loop. Now I will be 3. Okay, range of j will become 3. Then 3 will be it already became 4, right? So number 4 is printed. See, this I and this number is not related, and this j loop is also not related to it. The number is, that is why we need the number to be a separate variable. So it will print 4. It will become 4 plus 1, 5. This j loop is supposed to run 3 times this time, so it will go back here and print 5. It will become 6, go back here for the third time, print 6, become 7, go back to outer loop, the fourth and last one. So range of j will also become 4, print 7, become 8, then 9, 10, and no more range in the outer loop as well, and it will stop now. Okay, so it looks complicated but it's easy. That is it for our practice questions. So let's summarize today's lecture. Today we learned what nested loops are. A nested loop is simply a loop inside another loop. We learned that when working with patterns, the outer loop generally controls the rows and the inner loop controls the contents of each row, right? We also learned about the end parameter, which allows us to keep printing in the same line if we want. Then we created square patterns, increasing and decreasing star patterns, and different types of number patterns. Finally, we saw that nested loops can also be combined with if statements to create more interesting patterns. Nested loops are an important concept because they aren't only useful for pattern printing, they're also used for when working with tables, matrices, grids, right? And all of that. Now in the next lecture, we'll move away from loops and we'll learn about 4 important data structures in Python, that is lists, tuples, sets, and dictionaries. Okay, so this is the end of today's lecture. Thank you.